All right, thank you. Can you guys all hear me correct? All right, perfect. Do I have a yeah? So CAC is the new rent. Before we dive in, I wanna give you a painful situation to imagine. Imagine you went back home and your landlord sent you a rent revision notice. That means your rent just went up for the same house you're living in. And then you decided to switch to a new house, and then even that landlord, the rents just went up. And that's kind of the situation. It's a tricky and maybe a little bit unrealistic situation to be in, but funnily and surprisingly, most consumer brands still run their marketing programs in a similar way, where they're tied into this erratic landlord called Meta that keeps raising your CAC every single month, seemingly out of nowhere. Right? So that's the kind of problem that I want to talk about, and I want to share how some of the smartest brands are building what I call these predictable influence engines to reduce CAC and drive real incrementality. So let's dive in. Quick 30 seconds on why you should listen to me. We've got over I run an influencer marketing operating system platform. We've got some of the top brands across the US and the UK working with us. For those of you who like numbers, just last year we had 66,000 active partnerships between brands and creators active on the platform, which means we have a very unique perspective and a lot of data into the type of relationships that work and the type of deals that don't work. So everything that I'm going to share is going to come from all of this data that we have on the brands that are running successful influencer programs. For those of you like revenue numbers, just in 2024, there was over $43 million in incremental sales driven by brands through our platform using influencers at almost a 6x ROAS. So if you do the division there, that's roughly $2 million incremental per brand on average on our platform. So if $2 million additional revenue makes sense for you and sounds good as a concept for you to achieve for your brand, pay attention for the next 13 minutes or so that I've got here. So that's why you should listen and pay attention. So let's define the problem, right? What do I mean by the CAC inflation problems? Because I think oftentimes we don't define problems, but we talk about them a lot. So let me just define it. Because CAC doesn't go up because a lot of the times we position Meta as this weird, devilish, evil character that just raises your CAC out of nowhere, but it's fundamental market dynamics. What happens usually is consumer brands get to their first sort of growth base camp, usually $3 to $5 million GMV, using some form of paid media, typically Meta ads. And that works at the initial stage because you're new, you're showing your ads to new people, so people buy. And once you hit that sort of 3 to 5 million initial base camp, it's tough to scale your ads beyond that. You get to a point where you can't just spend more to make more. Your ads start plateauing, your ROAS is swinging wildly, and your CAC starts inflating. So why does this happen, right? Your Facebook ads were working 2 years ago, but suddenly they're not. So why does this happen? This happens because of point number 5, is because fundamentally in any market, at any given time, out of 100% of the people who could be buying your products, there's only 3 to 5% that are actively what you would call in market, that are buying actively, right? So when you're initially running your ads for the initial base camp, you're targeting the in-market buyers and getting all the sales. But what happens is eventually you run out of all of those people, and then 2 years in, you're now showing your ads to the same people over and over again, and your CAC starts going up. So fundamentally, the problem here is there's 97% of the market that you're ignoring with your ads. And without an active motion to bring those 97% into the 3% and keeping on refreshing the 3% on a month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter basis, your ads are going to continue to plateau. So no matter how much tweaking you do of the different settings in your Facebook Ads Manager, you're not going to truly get a step change in your ROAS. So that's fundamentally the problem is. So your rising CAC is just a symptom of you not moving people from the 97% to the 3% that are in market. And that's what I'm going to show you how you do, and the predictable influence system will help you do that. So that's that. So how do you solve the CAC inflation problem? Very similar to how you would solve the erratic landlord problem. If every landlord's just keeping on increasing your rents unrealistically, the way you solve that is by owning a house. Just make the upfront commitment, buy a house, because your cost of ownership would go down over time. Similarly, solve for the CAC inflation problem by owning mindshare. Now, mindshare, brand equity, all of these awareness, all of these sound like pretty woo-woo concepts. So I'm just going to break it down for you because I think, again, like I'm big on definitions, by the way, so just breaking it down at a first principles level really helps us understand and break down the problem, because owning mindshare sounds like this huge thing, but let me break it down. So typically, if you break down anybody's day, there are these, like, I like to say, call them scrolling sessions, right? So there's these, like, 5 scrolling sessions in everybody's day. Like, you're scrolling right out of bed, scrolling when you're commuting, maybe after your lunch break, 6 p.m. back home on the tube, and then the final session, scrolling session right before bed, which we're all guilty of, which we should not do. So typically, there's in any person's day, you and me, there's these 3 to 5 scrolling sessions that happen. So owning mindshare, what that really means is if you show up when they're scrolling in the morning, you show up when they're commuting, you show up at lunch, by 6 p.m., they're thinking, this brand is everywhere, right? They feel like you're everywhere because you're showing up consistently in your feed, in their feed, but you're not interrupting them, right? You're not interrupting them with constant advertising. You're organically showing up through different influencers' content. It's not the same as just interruptive advertising. So that is what I mean by when you just keep showing up, you own mindshare, and this creates this halo effect that your brand is everywhere. It feels like you're all over the place, but you're not. You're just like showing up thrice. So that's fundamentally the equation I would like to, because come from an engineering background, so a little bit of a equation for mindshare is if you just show up thrice in somebody's feed every single day, they'll feel like you're everywhere, and that's the perception you want to create as a new up-and-coming brand. You want to feel like you're everywhere. And typically, if you, again, like breaking that down, this again feels like, well, okay, I get it, but how do I show up every single day in everybody's feed? Sounds like too much, but it's not. If you break it down, it's only you just need 100 active ambassadors posting at least once per month, which is 100 posts a month. That's 3 posts a day on average. Right, so if you just get, this is your goal, right? So owning mindshare, forget about all of this. All you need to do is get 100 people to post about you, influential people, which is why ambassadors, posting about you minimum once per month. So that's our goal, right? And what does this look like in practice? What does this mean? When you start owning mindshare, you'll start seeing that Gen Z goes from ignoring your ads to actually following influencers and buying your products. You go from being dependent on the algorithm to diversifying your reach with hundreds of partners. You can basically reverse engineer your CAC with some of the models that I'm going to show you next. And you go from 0 brand equity, because you're basically interrupting people with your advertising, to building lasting brand equity and mindshare. So what, I mean, think about it. I want to emphasize that this is not a case. A lot of influencer marketers, and there's always these conversations, are influencers better or is paid media better? It's not about that. This is not a case against Meta ads. We all love Meta. I love Meta. But this is about building a foundation of owned media that, like I said, will help you take people from the 97% and build enough awareness that they are in the 3% when you hit them with a Meta ad. It's about building this owned media foundation using influencers, because on a practical basis, if you think about it, if someone's, I don't know, if a daily vlogger mentions your cleaning product in a vlog consistently, they're going to click on your Facebook ad 2 days later and buy. Or like if you're showing up, like I showed, if your beauty products is showing up every single day, on the weekend, they're just going to directly visit your website and buy without needing a discount. So this goes beyond just Meta ads also, because this means you're getting a sale at a much, much lower CAC, and you don't have to discount. You're not being commoditized a lot. So that's what it looks like. So at this point, you kind of get it. You're like, it's an upfront investment. We build mindshare, and we want to work with influencers, right? But typically, at this point, you kind of know all of this. But there's this sentiment that, okay, I understand we want to get hundreds of influencers posting about us, but we tried influencer marketing, Yash, and it did not work. We tried it, it didn't work. And typically, we get a lot of brands that say this to us when we speak with them for the first time. And when they say influencer marketing doesn't work, over 2 to 3 years of conversations, I've just abstracted it into one word. I call it the influencer roulette problem. What a lot of brands say, when a lot of brands say that they do influencer marketing, they're doing one of these like few roulette things where they're trying seeding, like they saw a LinkedIn post, somebody crushed it with seeding, they're trying seeding. Somebody crushed it with TikTok Shop, they do TikTok Shop for 2 months. Or they're doing random paid deals with no ROI, they're paying some influencers, seeing who posts, maybe there's ROI, maybe there's not. It's a lot of, or they're paying for scripted UGC videos and hoping and praying for virality. But a lot of it is just this roulette strategy. It's very hit or miss, and that is why it doesn't work. And the fundamental root cause here is there's no predictable system for growth via this channel. You're basically trying a bunch of things. Hopefully something works, something doesn't work. There's no strategy, there's no cohesive sort of binding glue behind all of this. And that's what I want to share with you, is like, what's that binding glue? It's this, like we call it the predictable influence pyramid, because this will help you. Again, let's not forget, if I go back a couple of slides, our goal is this, right? We want to get 100 people mentioning us once a month. How do you get there? You don't get there with roulette. You get there by having a strategy which helps you ascend people up a influence pyramid almost. And the way that brands typically structure, again, remember those 66,000 influencers that are actively working with brands. This is, and feel free to take a photograph, this is typically the ascension that brands do. There's like a base layer of seeding, right? But most people stop at seeding, and they don't do anything else, and then it doesn't work. But there's a base layer of seeding. Then what happens is roughly about 50 to 70% of people end up posting after you seed them a free product. Then you turn them into ambassadors. Ambassadors are more than affiliates, which means you're giving them, yes, affiliate commission, you're giving them discounts for their fans, you're doing giveaways, you're hosting them for events and so on. So that's your ambassador program. And that's where you typically, even when you build the first 2 layers, you start seeing those hundreds of posts coming in about you over, say, 3 to 6 months, depending on brands. And then what you do is don't even stop there, because, again, I'm all about predictability. You take the ambassadors, and if you run your ambassador program for 3 months, you'll find that the top, it's always 90-10 or 80-20. It's all the top 10% of your ambassadors are going to drive 90% of the sales, 90% of the views, and so on. You take those top percent and you do custom deals with them. Since you're paying them for UGC, you're putting them on retainers, you're giving them higher affiliate fees, and so on. So this like structured approach helps you beat this roulette. If this is all over the place, this is more structured ascension based on performance up a pyramid. So this is the strategy that a lot of brands on SARAL are using to building these owned media engines that are helping, again, take those 97% out of market and put them in market. So at this point, you're like, OK, I get it. I don't want to play roulette. I want to build the influence pyramid. But I want to be real with you and give you some blockers that you're going to face. Right? You're going to 3 common problems that we see. Right? There's the scale issue. This is not easy. Right? The seeding, it's not easy. It's very chaotic. Imagine hundreds of people every single month in a spreadsheet or in some sort of a CRM. It's very tough to do, especially if you're a resource-constrained, new up-and-coming challenger brand. So then you end up, you're either hiring an agency or hiring somebody in-house to do it. And there's no problem with hiring people, but especially when you're new and that's when brands come to us, it's very hard to justify that investment. So that's a scale problem. The second problem is measurement. The funniest thing about the influencer, or the sad thing about influencer marketing is even when it does work, it's hard to prove ROI, right? Because you're generating all of this halo effect, and suddenly your Facebook ads are starting to work well, but it's hard to prove that. There's no attribution that really proves that. It's going to run into a measurement issue. A third issue, really, even after knowing all of this, you're going to see is that where we see brands fail the most, even after all of this, is process. They don't have the right SOPs. They don't follow this system. Maybe they follow it for a couple of months, then they give up. And so you need to have the right processes. Otherwise, your relationships are just going to fall through. So these are some of the problems. And this is where SARAL, sort of my platform, comes into the picture. We solve for the scale. We have a very interesting seeding AI that does a lot of the finding influencers, reach outs, managing conversations, shipping products, making sure they post, all of that. Basically takes what used to take 15 to 20 hours of work before for one person and boils it down to maybe 2 or 3 hours of work every week. Solve for the measurement. We have a very revolutionary, to be honest, Pulse, we call it Pulse, reporting system that is basically, long story short, able to show you how impressions lead to sales on your Shopify. So happy to maybe walk some of you through it later on. And we solve for the process by being like an all-in-one. It's almost like, because I was running an influencer agency before I started the platform, we almost took our SOPs and turned them into software. So it's like an all-in-one. It basically helps you build this, but in software form. So you're almost biased towards winning. So that's what we do. Hopefully, this was useful. I'll leave this QR code here in case somebody wants to sign, but I want to leave you with an action plan. Go back to work on Friday or Monday and check out your current marketing budget allocation. See if you're able to reallocate 10 or 20% from your paid ads to this owned influence channel. And usually it's a tough conversation with your CEO or your CFO, but usually what we say is 6 months down the line, you're going to spend less on Facebook and get more efficiency out of it. So your MER scores start going up. So reallocate a little bit of that, then execute the pyramid that I showed you, measure ROI, hopefully with our Pulse reporting system, and then start scaling what is working. So yeah. Hopefully this was useful. I know a lot of you are here, a lot of us are here to gain an edge in our marketing system. So hopefully I was able to reframe and help you rethink some of your notions around influencers. Yeah, hope this was helpful. Thank you.